I am so excited to introduce to you today Albert Bramante. Albert is a veteran talent agent from Manhattan and a no-nonsense coach, inspiring actors to cultivate a growth mindset, conscientiousness, and rise above self-sabotaging habits. He empowers performers to overcome psychological roadblocks and achieve success. As a veteran talent agent with over 20 years of securing major roles for actors, he has unparalleled insights into the entertainment industry's challenges. However, his real superpower is his unique fusion of this experience with a PhD in psychology and certifications in hypnosis and NLP. This rare combination allows him to be a credible expert with a perspective on the mindset and psychology of peak performance. He doesn't just understand the pressures of the acting world and elsewhere. He can prescribe proven psychological strategies that help people break through self-doubt, imposter syndrome, fear of success, and self-sabotaging patterns. And I am Luci Gabel, integrative leadership trainer, author, speaker, and your host on leadership, life, health, and happiness. Welcome, Albert. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Lucy, for having me on. I appreciate that.
I'm so excited for our conversation.
Me
Yes,
too.
where shall we start?
Good question. One of the things that I've noticed, because I work a lot with actors, and I've been doing that for the past 20 years, and the issue of self-sabotage has come up in that capacity. And it also comes into place, being a college professor, I have so many students that were really talented and were just not applying their fullest potential in a sense. And that was one thing that I really noticed that needs to change. And so that is what it kind of led me down this road in a sense. So I did this for my doctoral dissertation on self-defeating behavior in performing artists, which later turned into the book that I wrote. It became a burning desire to figure out what's really going on here. Why were so many talented actors just being their own worst enemy, getting in their own way? And that's what really truly self-sabotage is really individuals getting in their own way. I see this a lot in a lot of aspects. CEOs sometimes and leaders even getting in their own way.
What does that look like?
I'll give you the kind of examples of what I know in my spaces. So that would mean being a really talented actor, but when you get up to audition, you kind of metaphorically choke. You forget the lines, or you hold back in the performance. You show up late to an appointment, unprepared, not show up at all. That's how that would look like. And even as a student, now I teach at the college level, so it's voluntary to be there. It's not required to be in class. And I'll see so many students that would attend and be in midway and then just stop coming for whatever reason. And I would never hear from them again until grades were due, and they would come email me and say, "Professor, is there anything you do for me?" No, you were not in class, and I can't help you there. But the truth of the matter is that's what I mean. And usually these people are very smart and very intelligent,
Mm-hmm.
and they may not even see it in themselves. I remember I had one poignant interaction with a student who had a bit of an edgy attitude. I'm going to put it nicely, towards me and towards the class. We were having a back and forth in the middle of the class, and she turned to me. She goes, "I bet you think I'm dumb." And I said, "I don't think that at all. I think you're incredibly bright. I think you're incredibly talented. But let me ask you a question. Do you believe that?" And she was silent. And that, I think, is the heart of the matter. What might be happening is self-belief, self-identity. So that's where I kind of came into the whole idea of even self-doubt plays a huge role here. And language is important too, the language we use, not just in ordinary interpersonal conversations, but even self-talk, the voice in our heads, the conversation we have within ourselves is important.
We see this everywhere. Many of us know that we have it, So, what does one do about it?
Be aware of the language you use. That's the important thing. For example, with actors, for some reason, and I don't know where this came to be, but there was that romanticized notion of art must be painful or the starving artist archetype. And if you identify with that in any capacity, that can be a problem. If you identify as the struggling artist or the starving artist or art is painful type of a thing, that can lead down the road to self-sabotage in a sense. So I see that a lot. I would say definitely that would be the first step, the language you use, using words that convey hardships like I'm poor, we're just not that talented. No, don't say that. Our brain and nervous system looks for reason to fulfill that narrative, so to speak, that's in our brain. So when it comes to like self-sabotaging behaviors, we become totally wrapped up into certain, situations in a sense. And when presented with opportunities for success, if we have these going on in our internal mindset, we're going to dismiss any opportunities for success or any opportunities to get out of that because it's our identity. It becomes rooted in our identity now of being poor or just being miserable or negative in nature. So the key here is to kind of transcend or rise above the self-talk that we're talking about. And that's where the title of my book, Rise Above the Script, came up to. I use script as a metaphor of acting and theater, but I'm talking about the internal scripts that are in our mind and how we approach the world, in a sense. We need to transcend that and to change it, change the narrative in our life. So, and this could be even something as simple as let's say you wake up in the morning, you stub your toe, or maybe you bang your knee against the bed, and now next thing you know, you're just like, "Well, I'm having a bad day today."
Hmm.
What's going to wind up happening? And this, I know, it sounds like sometimes maybe a little bit flowery and all that, but if you go around thinking that, like you keep telling yourself, "I'm having a bad day today," you will,
That's right.
because now your brain and nervous system are going to be scanning for those experiences that are going to confirm that. And that's why you've ever noticed a lot of bad things happen. Or the best is like something goes wrong and you say to yourself, what else can go wrong today?
What else?
And
Right.
you will find things will go wrong. But on the other hand, now let's flip the switch there and I'm having a great day. And you start thinking, what can go right? And you start to look for things that will go in that direction. So it's very simple, but it's actually not. Because again, we have to sometimes transcend an automatic dialogue, especially if we were used to that for a long time. So identity is definitely a big link here.
I want to get into that piece next, identity and
Hmm.
transcending. I want to pause for a moment though. Hey there, it's Lucy. I'm just popping in here for a quick moment. We've been talking about self sabotage and that inner voice that can hold you back. One thing that Albert's going to talk about is that it's also really helpful to be around people who get it, people who are also growing, leading, and learning, and even people further along in where you want to be. And that's what's happening inside the Leadership Life, Health, and Happiness members community. I've just opened the doors. I've got a special founding members price right now. It's not going to be around forever. And your first week is free. You'll find all the details and the links in the show notes. Now, back to our conversation with Albert. Rise Above the Script is your book's
Hmm.
name, just so that audience gets that. And you wrote that book based on your PhD thesis, right? I mean, this was
Yeah,
based on
the foundation, yes. Hmm.
research, not, this is, like you said, this might sound flowery, but this has actually been researched. Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't mention in your introduction, where do you teach right now?
So I teach at a community college in New York called BMCC as part of CUNY.
Are you more doing teaching now than being an acting agent? Are you doing both at the same time?
I'm doing both. I'm only teaching part time and I'm doing that on Zoom. The benefit of teaching on Zoom, I don't have to commute, which would take time away from being an
Mm,
agent. And I do have an assistant too that helps me. But
exciting.
yeah, it really is.
Okay, so you were talking about how what we say to ourselves really matters. And I'm sure people are thinking right now, okay, so I know I think those things sometimes. Now, you mentioned transcending these things. So, what's
Yes.
the next step? Because we start looking at our self talk and then what?
I'm a big believer in being compassionate with yourself and just catch yourself doing it and say, okay, I'm going to say it differently now. Because that's going to slowly start identifying yourself and being someone oriented towards success. Because a lot of times, the heart of like what really self sabotage is being your own worst enemy. And it's like sometimes your arch nemesis is the one looking at you in the mirror.
We can be so much more mean to ourselves
Oh,
than anyone else would ever be, right?
we're our worst bully than the school bully to ourselves,
That's right.
and we don't realize we're doing it, and some people make conscious like, oh, I'm just in jest, I'm being humble. I'm like, no, no, not quite. Being humble would be more of, I'm just an ordinary person who makes mistakes, but at the same time, I'm also successful and effective in what I do. Like I can confidently say I'm a good professor. Now, I'm not going to walk around at the other hand being arrogant. I'm the best professor on the planet. I'm not, but I'm a good professor. But at the same time, I'm always learning new things. And
Sure.
just like I'm a good age, I'm always willing to grow and improve. There's a difference there. I know my clients as an
Yeah.
actor, wouldn't want to be working with someone who's like, yeah, I tried.
That is so important. Yeah.
And you hear a lot of people explain themselves like that, and I have to double take. I'm like, wait, what? So we have to really identify the self-talk, and that's usually the first step, is how we communicate not to ourselves but even outwardly. A lot of times where we may be raised in very controlling households where we're told not to brag, and I think that advice has good intentions behind it, ill-informed, because we should be champions of ourselves. We should be celebrating ourselves. Now, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that we can't celebrate other people along with us, but
Mhm.
that there has to be that outwardly confidence, because my clients wouldn't trust me if I wasn't confident in what I was doing. How we talk to and review ourselves is going to affect how I approach my teaching and how I approach being an agent. Because you cannot be charismatic, you cannot be influential if your internal state is not aligned.
Get it right on the inside first, right? What's on the inside is what comes out.
Exactly. And that's why, like, some people will say, I want the proper technique to how to talk to somebody. I'm like, there is none. I had this young man in class. He must have been having trouble with dating. So he asked me if he took a psychology woman class, would he be able to talk to women more? And it took every ounce of self discipline for me to just not to start like bawling laughing. I'm like, no, that's not going to help you. That's
It was
not.
a good idea, though. I mean, he had good
And
intentions.
it's good in theory, and yeah, maybe you should, if you're going to be a future psychologist, that would be a class for you to take, but not for that reason that you're saying to take it for. Because even if you look at the most successful salespeople on the planet, their internal state is what is really guiding their sales. Yes, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm sure they went through training, but it's all about congruence. The average viewer may not know what's going on, but I can tell you that if your internal external mismatch, somebody's gonna come across and say, something's not right about this person. I don't know
Mm.
what it is, but something seems not right.
We can tell, we can sense.
The one thing that I think a lot of us are able to have a sixth sense to, like almost psychic ability, is confidence and security
Almost
in
psychic
somebody.
ability with others that we
Yeah,
know if
to
there's a
if they're insecure.
interesting.
And it's like a turn off. I know this is not authentic.
You're acting.
You're acting, or you're being phony. And now maybe the person might be telling the truth verbally, and they may actually think they're telling the truth. But what's going
Mhm.
on is there's a mismatch between their internal and external thing. That's why, again, the first
Mm.
thing we need to do is really work on our internal world before we change the external.
I heard you say there's a fear of success that
Hmm.
often comes into play with this self-sabotaging. Can
Hmm.
you talk a little bit about that? Share with the audience what that looks like?
Sure. Well, what's interesting with fear of success, it's not a conscious fear. It's not like something that says, "Hey, I have this fear of success." But a lot of times, it's the outcome. It's the what comes after. Now, that might mean more responsibilities, a change in your identity. Even going back to what we were talking about earlier, your identity is going to change because now you can't be this person who's inadequate. Now so that's going to be a change. So it's more about the changes that are going to in place in that, and then even relationships too can change. And I talk about this in my book, and I'm kind of upfront and honest. Is that a lot of times some people in our lives can be threatened by our successes if they're not secure in themselves. I was hearing this one successful person who landed a TV show, became like almost like an overnight celebrity. And the one thing that he said that really, really made me, consider this is that you would think that his family would be so proud of him, but he said a lot of his family stopped talking to him after he landed
Wow.
that role. And I'm like,
Mm.
that would make sense if they're threatened by your success.
Mm.
And I think there's a big thing about self-preservation, and part of self-preservation comes in with the relationships in our life too. So we don't
Mm.
want to rock the boat when it comes to the relationship, even on a subconscious level. So therefore, we'll do everything around to make sure that we stay harmonized, in harmony with those relationships. And then, or again, the expected changes or the expected pressure that we're going to have can
Mm.
cause us to hold back and just not be, and not put our best foot forward. And then there's also another element too is how do you view money? What's your relationship with money? What's your mindset around money? Now, everyone who's probably listening will say, well, I'd love more money. I know you do. How about unconsciously? Because if you, let's say, grew up in a household where sometimes you're taught messages or heard messages that are actually misquoted, like, oh, money's the root of all evil, or money is bad, or, people that are rich are evil people, the evil rich, the snobby rich. And you get these messages a lot from the people, again, your parents and maybe teachers. And so then you start to internalize, even on a subconscious level, that rich is bad, wealthy is
Right.
bad, money is bad. So
Filthy
therefore,
rich. That's a very interesting phrase, right?
I
Filthy
hear that a
rich.
lot. I'm like, where did we come up with that, filthy rich? Because
Yeah.
what that means is that there's something bad about being rich. And
Right. It's
even
dirty.
with the exactly. And then so somehow money has been associated with being dirty, and that's a concept that where it should never have come up because money is neutral. Now, the Bible, I think a lot of people misquote to the Bible because the actual Bible quote is the love of money is the root of all evil. The Bible never
Mm.
said money is the root of all evil. It's the love of. So if you take those three words, it's like taking those three words out. So now people believe that money is the root of all evil. And I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that in communities and TV shows and all that. So if you're a young person or child hearing these messages,
Oh.
money is the root of all evil, or money is bad, or filthy rich, I don't want to be evil. I don't want to be filthy. I don't want to be dirty.
Mhm.
So then your identity, you kind of your subconscious encodes or your brain encodes. I must not have money, and that's why a lot of people, even when they become rich, like wealthy, sometimes by either win the lottery or like they windfall somehow, they will often blow through the money incredibly fast to a point where they're actually even more in debt by the time it's over than they were before they started. That's why
I've seen
sometimes we'll
that.
see lottery winners who, they if you think about it, they won enough money that would technically make them set for life, but yet
Yeah.
2 or 3 years later they're in more debt than they were before they hit the lottery. Or
Mm.
even like athletes who may have won these, multi-million-dollar contracts, and now they're, you know, in bankruptcy a couple of years
Mm.
later because and I believe that a lot to do with how they manage money. And so if you come with that that flawed money mindset that money is filthy bad, Your subconscious is going to say, okay, it's money is radioactive. I need to get rid of it.
Get rid of it.
I need to purge this out of my life. And so that can hold you back too. And that, so it's not necessarily the fear of success, but what's the adjacent things that are going to come out of that's more
Hmm.
scary. And this was first discovered in the 1930s by psychoanalysts who said a lot of times when it comes to like working women, we're sometimes balancing the desire to be successful with also being a mom. That still to this day, I still see that as a common thing for working moms. Is
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, yeah, you want to
Absolutely.
be successful in a job, but then there's that guilt, and maybe even your old school family members that are, not in a sandwich generation that were like, "What's wrong with you? You should be home with your housewife and be home with your children." And so then you
Yes.
start doubting that, and then maybe you won't apply yourself at work like you should.
Hmm.
Maybe and then that can be you could start self sabotaging that way by not leading your fullest potential. So there's a whole host of factors, but again, it's relationships, relationship with money, your relationship with other people, and how you view change, and what your relationships would change, and
Hmm.
discomfort. Because again, when you are successful, your life is going to change, and change is uncomfortable. So, what is your relationship with being uncomfortable? We have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
We have to get comfortable with that.
Hmm.
So it's another form of what we started talking about, which is we have to we have to watch ourselves. What are we saying about these things to ourselves? And maybe
Hmm.
even what are we thinking? We might not even be saying it in words, right? We might just be feeling that feeling,
Hmm.
uncovering it. Would you say uncovering it is the first step
Yes,
to unrooting it?
I would say the first thing is uncovering it. That would be the
Mm.
first thing is to know that it's impossible. Because again, when you first hear the fear of success, people are going to think, "Why would I fear that?"
I was
Like,
gonna say, I'm sure everyone would say, "Well, why wouldn't I want success? Why wouldn't I want money?" Like, that's just ridiculous.
and what I would say is consciously, you're right. Why would you wouldn't question it, but unconsciously, there's a lot of things going on, and
Mhm.
so those are the things you have to kind of look for.
Look for that. We talked about a lot. If people got your book, let's say, would they be able to find some answers for themselves? Would there be something in there that they could work with or work through?
Yes, and again, it's just simply. I mean, the first step is just acknowledging. Well, it's not the solution altogether, but now you have the first step is acknowledgement. So, and I have other actions you could take. Like for example, the company you keep is important. I'm a big believer, and this is what like Napoleon Hill talked about as masterminds. Being around people that are just as successful or success oriented as you. And this is why again, and you don't necessarily have to be physically connected, even social media. Joining Facebook groups, joining groups on LinkedIn and just being really connected to people that are successful as you.
Or more successful, right? People who are in the place that you would love to be?
Yes. Another thing to do is to step outside your comfort zone. So
Mm.
go to that networking group, go to that networking event, go give a presentation at a Toastmasters or an organization. Talk about yourself for 2 minutes. Go live on social media. Start a podcast. Do things that can really stretch your out your comfort zone. And it's okay to be uncomfortable doing things because what we can do, even a simple reframing. What if we said instead of being nervous, I'm excited because physiologically, nervousness and excitement are the same thing. The
Mm.
adrenaline. So what if we transformed nervousness as excitement?
Reframe. What are we saying about this feeling we're having in our body
Yeah,
that is
yeah. I mean,
nervousness
it
or
doesn't.
excitement?
We just interpret it like, oh, my heart's beating faster. I'm starting to sweat. I'm getting the butterflies in my stomach. I must be nervous. No, you must be excited. You can be excited
That
too.
that's a
So,
good
but
way.
I would say that's the important thing is to step outside your comfort zone. Another thing is consistency. So doing one thing is great, but you have to repeat, do a repeated action. So, continually going to your networking groups, continually putting yourselves on social media. And the important thing is finally, I will say, just taking action.
Mm,
and taking those first steps to what it is you have to do. If you want to write a book, start writing the first chapter.
taking
And
action.
and holding yourself accountable. So one of my business coaches that I work with, one thing that she would normally do when we would say we want to do something, she'd pull out her calendar and say, "Okay, tell me the date that this is going to be done. That you're going to complete this." So, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's so powerful because a lot of times people walk away, well, someday I'm going to write a book, or someday I'm going to start this, or someday I'm going to start this project. If you say someday, it'll never happen because
Yeah.
someday doesn't exist.
Mm.
So take action today.
Or write it on your calendar for when you're
Put
going
it
to
on a
finish
calendar.
that action.
And break it down. Like I even talk about setting goals. Like I talk about the SMART goal system in my book, the first part, because I think a lot of times people set these goals. They want to get like from point A to point Z overnight, and sometimes it's about getting A and B is the first battle. So
Mm-hmm.
you can't write a book without writing the first couple of sentences, the first couple of paragraphs. You can't really write the first, then you write the first chapter. So setting goals like that would be important. Small goals, but manageable. But goals and putting things on your calendar. Because when you put things on your calendar, it becomes real.
Yeah. Excellent. Wow. These are great. You've dropped a lot of gems for the audience today. And I really appreciate your time. It feels like there's a lot more to say, but it's always good to leave people a little more curious. Maybe they'll get in touch with you. So we'll have your link in the
Yeah,
description.
please do. I'd love to chat with you. I can jump on a call with you and we can work together.
Sounds great, Albert. Again, just so appreciative of you sharing your knowledge and time with us today.
And I appreciate you having me out here.
And to the audience, thanks for sticking with us. If you like this episode, click like or give it 5 stars. Let us know in the comments what it made you think about and if you have any questions. And I'll talk to you next time.